1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Big Gun, beat my favorite.
What's up, nerds and nerdettes and wee little nerdlings all? To our buddy Big John and G from 2 Gun Picture presents Legendary Gaming. Alright, so I had so much fun doing that Holiday Christmas 12 list last week, or earlier this week, because this should be dropping on Sunday, at least part 1, that I decided to do another one. I wanted to change it up a little bit. What I wanted to bring to you is my 12 favorite dice chucking games for the holidays. So why don't we sit down, talk about this, and see what I got on my mind. Alright, so why don't we do this the same way we did last time. We're going to do this in 2 parts. So we're going to count down from number 12 to number 7 in this part right now. So what are dice chucking games? Well, they're games where primarily, or sometimes maybe the only thing you're really doing is throwing dice down on the table. Dice chucking games. Now, most games involve dice. I'm not talking about roll-to-move games, like Monopoly or anything like that. No, I'm talking about where the dice are an intricate part of the game itself. And in almost every case, I think I got one thing here that's different, but everything else on this list, the dice are pretty much the only real mechanic of the game. So what are some of these dice chuckers I talk about? Well, why don't we start with number 12. The number 12 game on this list is a 1-die game. Yeah, most dice chucking games, there's a lot of dice. Some of them, there's a ton of dice. This one, there is but 1 die. And we're talking about Cthulhu Dice by Steve Jackson Games. Designed by the man himself, Steve Jackson. So this is good for 2 to 6 players, ages 10 and up, and it's going to take you about 5 or 10 minutes, the publisher says. And I agree with that. Depends on how much you want to get into the game. I mean, you could always start the game with more sanity points to lose, and that would make the game longer, but it's not really needed. So the game has 1 die. It has a 12-sided die, but there are no numbers on this. There are symbols. There are several symbols on this die, and depending on what you roll when you are making your attack against your target will depend on whether you gain one of their sanity, whether you lose a sanity, whether Cthulhu gains the sanity, whether everybody loses a sanity. It's all about the sanity. Because you're playing this game, you're a cultist. You're a cultist, and you are trying to drive the other cultists mad. You're trying to feed Cthulhu while still being the last one standing. Because Cthulhu will eat you last. This game is definitely the fastest-paced dice game, the fastest-paced die game I have ever played. In fact, it goes so fast when you're playing a 2-player game, you sometimes lose track of who is the attacker and who is the target, because the target gets to retaliate. So in a 2-player game, you got attacker, target attacks the attacker, and then the target becomes the new attacker, and who was just attacking becomes the target. It can get confusing for about a hot minute before you go through it and you realize that it works, that the balance of the system back and forth is great. So if you want a game where you're chucking a die like nobody's business, a game where you're chucking a die so fast it's almost like a bullet, then you want to check out Cthulhu Dice by Steve Jackson Games. My number 11 game. This was a Kickstarter that I almost didn't kickstart. I kind of got talked into it, and I'm so glad that I did. And this game, Mana Forge. That's by Mystic Tiger Games. The designer is Brian Klein, and it's good for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up. Now, this game is going to be taking you over an hour. Hour and a half is probably about the average time on it. Could run up to 2 hours if you have a full 4 players. Now, this game is a fantasy game where you and the other players are magical, arcane blacksmiths, so to speak. And you're making magical objects and items. And the dice that you're rolling are giving you the amount of elements that you need, or hope that you need, in order to make these really awesome magical artifacts. And it's a victory point system base, so you have to get to a certain point, and that's all determined by how cool a stuff you're gonna make in your magic shop. And there are ways in the game, especially in the beginning of the game when you're choosing out your character board and your characters and everything, that you're going to get to choose cards that'll give you a little bit of a boost. And they're all based on the elements of the game that are represented in the dice. So you can become like an air master or a fire lord kind of thing as far as making stuff. And that gives you bonuses for that kind of magic that's utilizing that element. So this is a fairly fast game. The only thing that really bogs it down and can slow it down is trying to figure out what you want to make and going over sort of the math and the statistics in your head about what you might have the best chance to be pulling out of those dice, you know what I mean? But other than that, the actual dice rolling aspect of the game is fairly quick. There's not a lot of player downtime once you have it set in your mind and you have an idea of what you want to try to do, and it cuts down on that thinking. Taking time to think during your turn, in between your turn, you're still thinking about what you're going to do. It cuts that down, and that cuts down time lag between players. Because that's sometimes bothersome when you're sitting there for a long time just waiting for your turn. You kind of gets your head out of the game. I haven't had that problem with Mana Forge, not at all. So that is my number 11 game, number 11. The number 10 game. The number 10 game on my list is a game that's published by Asmodee, and it is Bang! The Dice Game. Yeah, you always got to say it like that because there's a big exclamation point after the word bang. So Bang! The Dice Game. This is good for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and it's going to run you 60 to 90 minutes. Now, the object of this game is, well, you have to survive. So you're going to be randomly picking your characters, and one of them is going to be the sheriff. Everybody knows who the sheriff is, and that's not a secret. But who everybody else is, now that's the secret. And the sheriff doesn't really know who his true deputies are and who the various enemies are. So during the course of the game, you're going to be rolling dice to determine how far away from where you're sitting in your sitting position, 1 seat away or 2 seats away, 1 seat or 2 seat, that you're going to be able to make an attack on someone or shoot someone. This is the Wild West. And you also have to be careful that the natives are going to attack. Yes, the indigenous native people, known back then as Indians, are always ready to go on the attack. And you never know when they're coming. So while you're fighting everyone else, the game is building up to this attack by a horde of Native Americans. It's attacking you on both ends, the other players and the game itself. And the whole time you don't know who's who. You're trying to figure out by basing on who is attacking who and who is giving beer, because, well, beer heals you. Of course it does. No bad messages in this game, just fun messages. But yes, so depending on who gives the sheriff the beer, will help the sheriff hopefully understand who's on his side. Then again, he could be being tricked. So bang! The Dice Game, falling in at my number 10 spot. Number 9. Coming in at number 9, this game is not a new face to some of my lists. It has made a couple of them, and it very well deserves a place here for dice-chucking games. And that is Fantasy Flight Games' Elder Sign. The more compact version of their Arkham and Eldritch games. More compact. Not a pocket game yet, but still. In this game, you are investigators. You are in, the base game, you're in Arkham, and it's the 1920s, so it's a regular setting, a familiar setting for a Cthulhian story, and you are going through the museum. because there's strangeness abounding in the museum. One of the elders is awakening. It's up to you and the investigators to put a stop to it, because if the elder awakens, that's it. It's the end. The end of what? You say the end of everything. Yeah, you don't want that. So you're going to be using the dice in a set collection style to overcome encounters as they happen. Now this isn't, what I'm about to say isn't exactly new in the dice set collection game, but it's not overly used from what I've been able to tell. And one of the things that I like about this is that certain cards and certain effects at times will lock dice away from you. Once you get used to having all these dice in your hand, maybe the extra red, maybe the extra yellow, if you have some items to give you those dice, you're getting really confident. And then, bam! Some card comes out that's got the red die or the yellow or both locked up, and you can't use them until you take care of that encounter. That makes it tough. One of the things that makes it tough in this game that me and my friends have actually had a house rule, and I just want to point this out right now, is giving. There is no action to give something to another player if you are in the same spot as them. I can't tell you how much that bothers me. But that's the only thing about the game that bothers me. If it bothers you, just do like we do in House Rule, that you can use an action to trade an item to somebody. Because it makes absolutely no thematic sense that if two characters are in the same place in the museum and one of them has an action left, that they can't give it away to someone. They can't give an item. They can't use it, not give their action away. But I mean, use their action to give an item that they have to someone else that might be able to use it. Anyway, that's the only problem I have with the game. Otherwise, I love this game. It is the fastest paced version of a Cthulhu game, at least my Fantasy Flight games, that I've ever played. One player is kind of tough. It's best to use multiple characters if you're going to be playing that. But this is a good game, and I really think it's worthy of this list. The number 8 game. Number 8 game is one that you've seen recently. Was it last week or the end of 2 weeks ago? Yeah. And that's a game I got from Kickstarter. And that is a game that is published by Golden Egg Games. And it is Dice and Dragons. D&D. After a sense. So this is another dice set collection game. And it uses 6-sided dice, and 5 of the symbols match one of the classes that you are able to play, while the 6th symbol is a dragon. During the game, you are hunting dragons, evil dragons that have been scourging the land, killing people and eating puppies and kicking babies and all those things dragons do. Whatever a dragon does in this world, in this Dice and Dragons game, they are doing the most evil version of it. So you and your party of adventurers are going to stop them. So you're going to have to roll sets of dice in order to get your unique class abilities to work, which gives it a sort of MMO feel. And on top of that, after you've used an ability, or if you couldn't get an ability to work, if the dice just really fracked you, then you cover up an ability. The one you used, or if you didn't use one, you have to pick one and it hasn't been used and cover it up. And you have to wait until you do that 4 times. After the 4th time, it gets picked up and everything is refreshed, so to speak. Again, a little bit of an MMO or at least a video game aspect to it, which is friendly, which is nice, which makes it a little bit more accessible to people that play more video games than board games. This game has a campaign mode, which I haven't done yet. I've done a bunch of single runs, and I'm still having a tough time at this. It's not very easy. One of the things that does help you along, though, is being able to sacrifice any 3 of a kind in order to heal, or do a quick little jab on the dragon. But the healing part, that's what's going to save you in this game. But not me yet. I haven't won it yet. But I still really, really enjoy playing this game that Elad Goldstein made for Golden Egg Games. So yeah, check out Dice and Dragons if you like dice chucking games. Now the final game, number 7 for part 1 of my favorite dice chucking games for Christmas, the holidays. However I'm going to name this, I haven't quite decided yet. Deal with it. So the last one on this part 1 is coming in. Now this is a game I've mentioned a couple of times over this past year, and it deserves to be mentioned. I think especially if you're a fan of Star Trek. By Mayfair Games, Star Trek 5-Year Mission. Now this is a cooperative game of dice-chucking proportions. This is another set collection game, as a lot of the big dice games, or I say big dice game, I mean games where you're chucking a lot of dice. So yeah, again, you're going to have encounter cards. Now, these encounter cards are all based on real television shows from the original series and the next generation, because you can play either one of those two Enterprise crews for this, or even mix it up. Star Trek's no stranger to time travel now, is it? So in this game, like I said, there's going to be encounters that are coming up while you're on the Enterprise and you have to deal with. And there are 3 different categories. There's green alerts, yellow alerts, and then the red alerts. There's some cards that break down communication. Now this gets really interesting. Because it's a cooperative game, sitting at the table, you're allowed to round table with each other. You're allowed to talk to each other. You're allowed to make plans, like any good crew should. But I like these communication breakdowns. They make it interesting because you literally are not allowed to talk to each other at the table until that is resolved. And man, you get used to. You're playing the game, especially if that card doesn't come up right away. You spend a few rounds getting used to the idea that you and the other players are talking and discussing and making plans for each of the encounters. And then all of a sudden, bang! Nope, no more. Not until you take care of this. It adds a little bit of an extra level to the game that I really enjoy. But otherwise, the best fun of this game, because it's a fun dice chucking, dice set collection game. But what really gets me is the fact that I love Star Trek. And being able to play these characters through real adventures that I grew up watching on TV is so much fun. So if you love Star Trek, or even you are just a mild fan of Star Trek, but you love chucking dice, yeah, my number 7, Star Trek 5-Year Mission.